welcome to this edition of Indian Education Outlook. I'm your host, Ramananda Sengupta, and we have a very interesting topic which is on everybody's mind nowadays, which is reimagining learning with technology. And we have a very sort of distinguished panel on board today. We have Hemant Sahal, founder and CEO of Kolpol, which is a 6-year-old enterprise technology for education. It's trusted by the topmost Indian institutions and backed by global investors. Then we have Dr. Pankaj Mittal, Secretary General of the Association of Indian Universities.
Hello.
And she has the distinction of being the second woman that post in its 95 years of existence. We also have Professor C. Rajkumar, Vice Chancellor of Jindal Global University, a premium private university known for its law program and recognized as an institution of eminence by the Government of India. We also have Akshay Munjal, President of BML Munjal University, which is backed by the Hero Group and mentored by the Imperial College London. And last but not least, we have Dr. Achyuta Samanta, founder, Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences and Kalinga Institute of Industrial Technology, Bhubaneswar. Thank you so much for joining us. I think this is a subject which a lot of our viewers are extremely interested in. I'm sure many of them are actually involved in the education domain, so they will expect a lot of takeaways from this particular discussion that we have. Let me start with you, Hemant, since we are talking technology. Institutions really can't do away with physical assets that they have, the campus, they've built it up for a long time. And now we have these new costs of, buying multiple technologies and things like that. So how is that sort of, going to impact these institutions? I mean, is there some kind of a magic wand that you hope to have, or are you going to sort of,
So Ram, I think the answer lies in that technology is not a short-term solution. Anybody who's trying to use technology in a short-term way is going to burn their hands with very high costs, right? So the best example I can come up with is that if you try to do keto diet suddenly, you're going to end up having a upset stomach, right? So if you want to get the benefits of it, you need to have a long-term plan. So most of the time what we see that institutions who will invest in technology in a long-term way, in a very strategic and a planned way, will actually get to reduce their cost in the long term. And I think as we discuss this further, I'll share some points around that first, that in any particular course, we can easily have parts of it which can be pre-recorded, which can be live classes where there is an exchange of information. And at the same time, when it comes to campus operations, because most, we have BML Munjal University, Jindal Global University, and even KIIT, which is a large residential facilities. So how can technology be leveraged? And, we are very thankful to Jindal Global University, where we have been working for 4. And, so Dr. Raj is the founding vice chancellor, and I always call JGU as a founding university partner of Kolpol, where we have been working for quite long time. And they know that how technology can play a role in cutting down costs, bringing in efficiency, increasing compliance, and all that will actually end up giving a better ROI to the institution. But if you're looking at just short-term solutions, obviously the cost is going to be a burden, and institutions will face that hit.
I'll come back to you on that one, because when you talk long-term, many people don't have that kind of time given the pandemic that's going on. But anyway, let me move on to Dr. Mittal. Dr. Mittal, as head of the AIU, you must be privy to a lot of pain points that are coming in from all the universities around. So would you like to sort of list a few of them, and what are the main sort of pain points that universities seem to be facing now?
Okay. Thanks for asking that question. See, at AIU, when we saw the universities, when they closed all of a sudden and the students were forced to stay at home, the first and foremost thing was online teaching. But online teaching, it is easier said than done, because one, infrastructure, you were talking about technology to Hemant. Infrastructure was not there with many universities. We can talk of elite institutions, Jindal, KEET, Munjal, whichever is sitting here, they are all elite institutions, and they have funds to have a good technology. But India is a diverse country, big country, and we have rural area universities, we have backward area, we have remote area. So many universities are finding a trouble in having a proper infrastructure in terms of all. I mean, some universities don't even have electricity throughout the day. So the problem is of electricity, problem is of devices, problem is of networking, and problem is of bandwidth. Although government says that we have reached network till the panchayat level, but bandwidth is a very, very big issue, and without bandwidth, we cannot have online education. And second issue which came up was capacity building of the teachers, because teachers were not used to teaching online. They were not taught how to teach online. So many teachers, many universities approached us that our teachers are finding it very, very difficult to teach online. So we did hold some workshops for them to train them to teach online. Plus, right now we have a course which is a self-paced course, free of cost, that how to become an online practitioner. That is available on AIU website. If any of the teachers wants to join, they can join that course. But capacity building of the teachers was a major issue, and similarly capacity building of the students to learn online. It's not only the question of devices, it is also to know how to learn online. So that was an issue. And third, the biggest difficulty which the universities were facing was examinations, because every university was so sort of confused, or they were in a fix that how to hold the examinations online, because many platforms are not available, very few are available, physical examinations are out of question. So how to go in for a proctored online examination, that was the third. And fourth was online internships as well as online placements, because many universities, they are claiming that the placements which were given to their students, they are being taken away due to this corona pandemic. So there are issues with regard to online internships as well as online placements.
Wow, I think you've sort of, listed out all the major pain points that we have, and I think Hemant is smiling away, trying to understand how to sort of, put those questions together. But Dr. Rajkumar, a residential program is preferred by many people simply because of the campus experience. I mean, I have friends who studied at Jindal and who claim that, campus experience is what they go there for. It's not just the academic kind of a thing. So, do you see online examinations being as efficient as a physical classroom? And what's been the feedback from your students as well as your teachers?
Oh, thank you so much, Ram, and such a pleasure to be among this illustrious group of educationists and people who have been contributing to education. Let me begin by saying that, as Madam Dr. Pankaj Mittal mentioned, we see ourselves to be a privileged institution. And so it's quite remarkable that soon after the lockdown, we so quickly transitioned to online education that it almost it shows how much of a divide there is in our country when it comes to education institutions. And I also want to take up what Hemant said. This is not. This cannot be an afterthought. This cannot be just a sideshow. You need to believe in the role of technology from day one, and that's what we did. And we are very, very happy with what Colpol has done to the overall administrative mechanism. So many areas were such a pain before Colpol. So we are very happy with the way Colpol could make many things that we do inside the campus efficient. And in fact, I have some very interesting ways by which. So I do a meeting. For many, since Colpol came into our life, I have a open house with students, and this is entirely done by Colpol. Every student have access to me. I meet them 25 individually, and I spend an hour with them. And they register through Colpol. There's a 25 member cap. And so we've been doing several of these things long before. To answer your question, so the technological transformation of education has really been taking place for a while. A lot of us in the field of education were not coming to terms with it. Some of us were uncomfortable, even me. I must confess that many things that I have begun to believe in the last couple of months, necessity is mother of invention. I have rethought these issues before, and I've realized that we need to adapt to the current environment. And I think once you move into the adaptability phase, then you start thinking about how to make it better. So there is a phase of acceptability, adaptability, which will move into innovation and then to excellence. And that's what we are in that phase where how do we make online education more better than what it was ever before. And a lot of our faculty are investing time in creating technological platforms and developing new pedagogies of learning where online education can move beyond just a professor speaking in front of a camera. In relation to the question of examination assessment, absolutely. I mean, we really need to rethink the whole notions of examination and assessment in this regard. In fact, it's a pity that a crisis of this kind is now beginning to make us think in that direction. In fact, this is probably will be the biggest response to the rote learning model of most of Indian school education, and I dare say even a large part of Indian college education too. I had the privilege to study in 5 universities in the world: Loyola College Madras, Delhi University, Oxford University, Harvard Law School, and the University of Hong Kong. And I tell you, all my exams in most parts of the world were, take home, and they were never this idea of, sitting in a hall and having these proctors monitoring you from cheating and all of that. The whole framework of examination needs to change. And I dare say entrance examination, a major area of reform. Again, we are very privileged. We very quickly announced all our entrance examinations are online, artificial intelligence, AI, handled, and remote proctor type exam. The face of innovation through online technology, we will make mistakes, and we should not be afraid of. We will see inefficiencies, just as we saw in other methods, and that will help us reform. But if the fear of the online is going to delay our ability to do many things. Today, for example, if you look at many aspects of our current board exam, entrance examination, IIT JEE examination, NEET, all these things are a bit of a limbo because we are still focused on that type of examination that we have in our mind, and that has to change. I also think that entrance examinations should be taken out of universities. I mean, universities should have no business whatsoever with regard to entrance examination. No good university anywhere in the world conducts entrance examinations. It's all done by independent agencies: SAT, ACT, LSAT, GMAT, GRE. You pick it up. In other countries, there are other examinations. In India, there's something strange that has been going on for years. Even my alma mater, Delhi University, they end up conducting their own entrance examinations, public, private, all of them do it. We just need to get that out, and it should be done by independent professional agencies.
You made some interesting points there, but again, seeing it more as a long-term kind of a thing than a short-term kind of a solution, as Hemant also mentioned. Mr. Munjal, as students start coming back to the campus, one of the main fears that both students and their parents have is the campus safe? What happens if there is another, infection or a pandemic that comes in? What kind of steps are you taking, for instance, to, allay those fears?
Great question. Before I answer that, I'd like to, it's my honor and privilege to be here with such august company. I'd like to thank Outlook for organizing this. Now, the very valid question, how do we allay the fears of parents and students when campuses reopen? Because at this stage, there's a lot of fluidity. There are different voices we are hearing, whether it is from UGC, MHRD, Haryana State. Nobody really has a fix on when the universities would or colleges would reopen. But some of the steps we are doing is we are planning to. Earlier, we used to have different kinds of hostel rooms, double, triple share, whatnot. So now we have to reduce that only one student per hostel room. Second, we are going to limit the capacity of dining. Rather than operating at 100% capacity, we are going to have more shifts so a larger audience can eat over a longer period. Third, in classes also, like Dr. Rajkumar rightly pointed out, we have no option but to accept technology. We cannot expect that we will continue in the old way. So once university reopens, we are also planning We will call students in classes in batches or shifts, while half of them could be physically in class, the other half are looking at the lecture online, and vice versa. So there are multiple, we have to look at every aspect, right from when a student enters the campus, how faculty staff are coming in, how different vendors are coming in. It's a Herculean task because what we've all seen with COVID, once it enters anywhere, it does not discriminate. And the way it spreads, it's unfortunately we are seeing the brunt of it in India right now. And the onus is on all of us. How do we secure campus fully? So we are mapping out each and every aspect for students, for faculty, for staff, for various vendors. When they enter campus, what is the SOP, what they are expected to do for faculty, because some faculty stay on campus, some commute from outside. What is the SOP around that? It'll be a completely new world. One of the things with education is we were very reluctant to change. As I look at education, we've been very reluctant to change over the last many decades. And what COVID has done is it's completely shattered that belief. We've been left with no choice but to accept the new reality. And I think in a way, what education will see post COVID will be a very different model. It is not going to be the traditional one classroom of 60 students, um, lecture going on. There'll be a far more use of hybrid, blended models. There'll be a lot more self-learning, more use of technology in all aspects. So we are actually, it's a very exciting era we are entering in education. And I think there's no other sector.
What you just described to me sounds like a massive logistical nightmare as well. I think Hemant might be able to help you with part of that. I think he might already have a solution there for you. Dr. Samanta, COVID brought the digital divide in education very sharply into focus. All students have laptops or cell phones and smartphones and things like that. And we cannot sort of afford to leave those students on their own. So how do you think we can address this particular issue?
Yeah, thank you very much. It is a very relevant questions you have asked. And you will be happy to know that we have been working for the last 75 days on this mode. It is a fact that now this pandemic corona is going on across the globe. Everybody is afraid of this corona, when it will end, etc., etc. At the same time, you see everybody is fighting for his own, her life, or the livelihood, etc. At the same time, education is the very important role to play. And suddenly it has come that all sectors perhaps have been affected and damaged because of this COVID-19. Education sector is also no exceptional case. As you have rightly told that laptop, etc., iPhone, all these things is not possible for every student. As rightly told by Dr. Pankaj Mittal ma'am, we are sitting here very few elite institutes. So elite institutes have also elite students. But we should keep it in mind that India is a huge demography, 1.3 billion populations. And we all know, or particularly I can say, Corona has opened the eyes of policymakers how India is poor with respect to all advanced technology, be it internet, be it anything else. And we all know out of 1.3 billion population, percentage is higher in rural areas. In rural areas, you cannot believe there are a lot of problems for the students, particularly young mass, at this COVID-19 crisis. Because the stable internet connectivity is a daydream. Even electricity is not available for 24 into 7. And there are so many things. I will give my example because I am very much fortunate to integrate two things in this COVID-19 crisis, which I have been doing for the last 30 years. You have already told about me. I am also the founder of Kalinga Institute of Social Science, KISS. This
Right.
question is meant for my KISS, a home for 30,000 poor tribal children from the standard 1 to KG to PG or doctoral program. It is also the only one tribal university in the world exclusively for the tribal children, fully free, fully residential. Because of COVID-19, all these 30,000 children are their respective houses or villages. And you know the poverty and hunger. And all of you must be knowing, those who are listening to me, the condition of the poor children in the rural areas. So it has been so difficult to connect to these tribal children in the different corners of the entire Odisha state. But still, we have not left them because it is our primary duty to be connected with the students. But initially, we know this poverty creates all these things. And in this context, I can cite, you must be aware of how one girl in Kerala made suicide because of lack of internet connection for her study. One girl in Kerala is on the rooftop just to have the internet connection to for her study, etc. Today, it was published in our here in Odisha newspaper. In Odisha newspaper today, it is published that one student of KISS reading in 8th standard made suicide in the agriculture field because his father did not give him rupee to purchase one phone, smartphone.
Oh,
It was published today in this newspaper, and that student belongs to KISS. So easily you can easily understand it is so difficult to connect the students in the rural areas, etc. because India is such like that, and we should feel sad. We are always proud of IT, etc., etc. We are very big, we are very great in comparison to other countries, but we all know what is the situation of IT prevailing in the rural areas, be it internet, be it any other things, even telephone connectivity. But we have made some solutions. First, we reach to our students with the help of the WhatsApp in their phone. And 75% students are covered because of this, because they have the phones, etc., etc. And second thing also, we thought it is not possible. We have our own one electronic media, TV channel. So through TV, I have started teaching 1 hour every day to the 10th and 12th class. Then also, you will be happy to know that recently we have devised that as there should be one smartphone with the students. Then if we provide them memory chip with all the study material, and student will put this memory chip and get the entire study material, pass on this memory chip to other students, other students, other students, which does not cost so much. In these 3-4 ways, we are devising how to reach our poor students, particularly or the students in the rural areas. As you have rightly told, digital divides the entire things, rich and poor, region wise, gender wise, economic condition wise. Region wise, you see, you are staying in the cosmopolitan city, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, all these things. All these things are very highly available. Suppose the interior area. Similarly, in case of the economic position, I have already narrated the case of 2 girls or the 1 boy from our own institute KISS. Similarly, you see the gender wise also. Suppose in one family there are 2-3 siblings, and generally girls are always denied in the rural areas, the poor family, not to use the phone. Suppose father has 1 phone and 2 to 3 children. So in that condition, so there are so many disadvantages are going on for this year. But anyhow, we have to be connected with the students at any cost, and that's why we have been connecting with the students till date. And we are also devising more things how to reach. And another last things we have done for your kind information, that cluster. Suppose there should be broadband connectivity up to the panchayat level, as and madam has told, the panchayat level up to broadband has been. So we are now sending our 1000 teachers to the respective panchayat level just to spend 7 days and to have the students gatherings in that panchayat level, etc., and to have one-to-one attraction, because we all know classroom teaching is the only teaching. These are all the temporary solution. Whatever we are doing it will never fulfill the classroom teaching. So it is a temporary phase, we think so. And how many months or days it will continue, nobody knows. But only solution that is required very much, the classroom teaching. Otherwise, there is no solution, because this online, all these things are required for just few days or few months. But it is not the, because if all these things are happening, then students need
From
not
that,
have to come to the class. So these are some of the ways we have been practicing for these children to reach in the interior parts of the state.
mhm. Uh, you know, you raised a lot of important questions there, but Dr. Mittal, if I can come back to you, what Dr. Sam talking about is students not being able to sort of reach the university on time because universities are shut down. There was a suggestion by some people that perhaps we could, particularly for courses which require lab facilities, that why can't we share the lab facilities across all universities so that a person who lives, let's say, in Calcutta to university doesn't necessarily have to go all the way to Chennai just for the lab. He can go to a local university and use those facilities for the exam. That's number one. Number two, as Dr. Rajkumar also pointed out, we seem to be getting a lot of conflicting sort of messages coming in from the UGC and the new body that is being set up, the new education policy and all that. What do you think we should be looking at? Should we be looking at sort of more government aided things coming in, or should universities just be left with themselves to handle the education? That's two different sets of questions. I'm going to look at the first one first.
Okay, thank you, Ram. First question is, I will try to be short because you have to cover many people. First question regarding sharing of labs. See, sharing of labs is something which UGC, because I was earlier working with UGC, which UGC has been talking for a long, long time that people should be sharing labs. If a good facility is there in a university, that can be shared by neighboring universities also. But this is what we preach. But what happens within the university is that within two departments also they don't want to share. So if one department is having something, then they will ask, second department will also ask for the similar facilities because they don't want to share. So the solution was found in the form of inter-university centers. UGC has many inter-university centers, and the facilities which we are not able to replicate in many universities because of the cost, they are given to inter-university centers, and all the universities people go to that center and then avail of those facilities. So, but of course, I again say that sharing of labs is a very, very important thing. But in this COVID time, when they are not able to physically go to the labs, there is something called virtual labs. So if you go to vlab.co.in is the site. So if you go to that site, there are virtual labs in which the students can do experiments sitting at their home also. So I think they can also make use of virtual labs, which is now being used very, very commonly by the students. Second thing, with regard to conflicting circulars, what happens is that in such a situation when corona comes and nobody is aware what is happening, nobody can even decide what will happen. Sometimes we say we'll open in July, sometimes in August, sometimes we say we'll have the examination, sometimes we say it should be open online examination, sometimes we say that it should be the previous year's examination, the average should be counted and the mark should be given. All this happens because nothing is being decided by us, everything is being decided by corona, because corona decides what will happen. Depending upon how fast it is spreading, how much is the menace, everything keeps on changing. So we are also evolving. Like before this, when I was working with Swayam is the India MOOCs platform. There also, when we were developing the courses for Swayam, we also didn't know how to make it. Now that Swayam is so relevant in today's time, at that time when we were making, the teachers who were asked to prepare the courses, they were so camera shy, they were not even able to teach the camera. They say we can teach the classroom, but teaching a camera is very, very difficult for us. But then we kept on evolving with the times, and slowly, slowly SWAYAM was made. So here also, UGC, MHRD, everybody is evolving, because this is something unprecedented, something unheard of, something which we are facing for the first time. So slowly, slowly they are evolving, and maybe better solutions will come with the time.
You know, Hemant, if we look at what Dr. Samanta said when she spoke about the digital divide, is there an innovative solution which can help bridge that gap? Is there something that you've been thinking about which can be implemented to sort of fix that gap?
Yeah. So, I think one answer is that what we are seeing now in terms of people trying to do online classes and adopt online exam, I think a lot of this is just a reaction to the symptoms of the problem that has come, right? What will help us is, again, you might say that I'm bringing in a long-term approach every time, but that is the only solution. We have to look at, institutions have to very scientifically look at which courses can be taught online, which courses cannot be taught online, then how are we going to do the distribution? There is no point making the teachers teach a subject which cannot be taught online, and there is a requirement for a in-person experience there, right? So that is point one. Second point is that if you remember, I think we have come a long way from those huge Motorola mobile phones we used to have to all these smart, slick devices we have in our phones, right? So I think a lot of this is also what time will solve. Already we are seeing internet has become more affordable. We have far cheaper smartphones available. And if you go to a lot of low income group areas, you would see a lot of them have dish TVs in their areas, right? So my friend who's an Achyuta fellow and works in the sanitation space, and he used to put toilets in low income group areas, and he used to say people are not ready to pay for toilets, but they are ready to buy a dish TV, right? So it's also a question of priority, that over a period of time, if a smartphone and an internet available on it becomes a necessity for learning, for skilling, for growth of income, I think more and more people will start investing in that. And obviously markets are very smart. Markets will come out with low cost EMI options. They will come out with several different market will react to the opportunity. So I think from an infrastructure, I think over a period of time, this will definitely get solved. It's a question of whether institutions are taking a long-term approach. Are they really addressing the root cause of why we were not prepared to address this issue that suddenly came in front of us? And are we doing the right things now to be more prepared for it in the future, or are we going to just do away by just solving it somehow, conducting online classes, completing the and I'm surprised sometimes where I've seen the kind of naivety with which institutions have adopted some of the technologies, because they're going to burn their hands. So there needs to be a scientific long-term planning in adopting technology, which has to be how are we driving learning outcomes, value for which a student is coming to a campus, and then come out with solutions and not look at anything short term immediately.
So one of the things that came to mind when you said the short term and the long term kind of solution thing, that when you have, let's say, a totally off the cuff kind of a solution, for instance, I believe there are some villages where they do the lessons over the loudspeakers used for namaz.
जो डिस्टर्बेंस वो लोग का तरफ से ना हम लोग
to a phone, so they actually have all the lessons over that microphone, over those those mics. Of course, I mean that tends to but do you have some other kind of a solution which integrates thoughts that are already existing and sort of put a that I'll leave you with that thought. Dr. Rajkumar, there are concerns that you spoke about so many technological innovations and adapting and adapt or perish kind of a philosophy. But there are concerns among many students and their parents that a huge chunk of the cost of these technologies will be passed on to them. Now, do you think that's a valid fear, or do you think that that's something that people shouldn't worry about so much?
All right. Let me, since you are very keen on short-term solutions, let me first give you a few short-term solutions. I think there is a lot of, first of all, we need to differentiate universities from its capabilities in terms of financial ability. So one size fits all policy wouldn't work. So those universities which are capable of investing in technologies and should do that, online education and digital learning should be promoted, because that's going to be some part of the future. It does not mean brick and mortar campus is going to go away, but it is going to be more and more blended learning in different forms. The second, I think the major challenge which Dr. Mittal and Dr. Samanta is saying, and I think Dr. Samanta has a very important point, which is about the issue of equity and the larger question of access across the country. In fact, a data point that we all have to remember, and whenever I hear the data point, it worries me. The data point is this: only less than 10% of Indian households have some form of uninterrupted electricity and reasonable broadband and a computer to learn or anything like that. So that is the type of situation we are talking about. So in there, the government comes in a big way. And frankly speaking, significant investment ought to have happened long ago, and we need to do that and do it urgently. But the moment we talk about public, more democratic and more inclusive education, we need to use all forms of platforms. So for example, radio, I mean, we need to really use, nobody has used the word radio. I mean, one of the remarkable things about, Man Ki Baat, which our Prime Minister, does, I believe it is just available across, the country. There are small town villages. People sit here. We need to bring the Shiksha Ki Baat as Man Ki Baat. So we need to take education to radio in a big way. We also need to recognize that there has to be state intervention. I mean, the reality is a large part of India is in that situation where that requires significant impetus coming from both the state and the central government. The fourth is which you asked the question also, is that we need to bite the bullet and take some very difficult decisions as a country. We cannot have individual universities and colleges and decide whether they will open, and if they open, what they will do and what is going to happen in different states, because at the end of the day, education, there's a lot of mobility. Students studying in Munjal or even Kit and Jindal, they could be from any part of India. So it's not going to be okay if different states can decide. There has to be a national level policy orientation that should very clearly articulate what is going to happen for the next 6 months and the next 1 year. And all of us are expected to put in place systems that are needed to follow. I mean, look at universities around the world. Today, UK institutions, Cambridge University decided that they will education entirely online for the next 1 year. Harvard Law School, where I studied, they decided just 3 days ago they will go till December completely online. I am not saying what we need to decide, but decisions need to be taken, because our country, the reality is individual universities are not sufficiently empowered to take decisions on their own, because that will be subject to somebody else telling later that this is what you need to follow because you are in this state or you are in this district or you are this type of a university, and all of that will come from other regulatory bodies. And the last thing I will say is that the point about innovation, this is the time. As far as cost is concerned, I think it's very important that everybody need to participate in it. As far as public institutions is concerned, this should be supported by the state. As far as the private institutions are concerned, the cost need to be managed in a manner that it is acceptable and reasonable from the standpoint of students and parents, subject to availability of sufficient scholarships and other forms of hardship allowance for people who simply can't afford. One of the things that we need to recognize, and that's the more difficult and more controversial statement I'm going to make here, is that far too long, education has been subsidized in our country for a lot of people who don't deserve it. For example, I'll give you my own example. I come from a middle-class family in India. My father is a professor. My mother is a government doctor. but the tuition fee that I paid in Delhi University and campus law center faculty of law was ridiculous. I should have been asked to pay at least 10 times more, and still it would have been fine. I did not deserve, and I'm not, by the way, my parents are not some phenomenal rich people, middle class, but I paid like 500 rupees. I mean, I paid for my school education more. So we need to have rationalization of fee structure across public institutions as well, so that the more affordable people can end up paying more, and the people who can't afford are given completely free education. Of course, then you have Dr. Samanta type people who are noble souls, who really offer free education for hundreds and thousands of people. And I hope that one day he gets a Nobel Prize for his contribution to peace, because education is the foundation for peace. And but that's exceptional. I mean, there are not too many Dr. Samantas, not just in India but around the world. But a large part of higher education need to prioritize all these things that I just told you.
I second your proposal for Nobel Peace Prize for him.
I'm sure all of us do, because when we were listening to him, we realized that he's doing it out of sheer passion. There's no other way of looking at it. But Mr. Munjal, BMU, I mean, we're coming back to the question of labs and things like that. So, you have certain world-class labs and centers of excellence and things like that. But how do you plan to use these facilities in an online environment? I mean, maybe Hemant has already tried to explain how to do that, but just from my own understanding, that you have all these labs in place, but can you sort of transform them into labs online, or do you have to have a totally separate kind of a approach to it?
I think you'll have to have a separate approach to it, because given the way existing labs are made, they are made for students or faculty to work with their hands. They don't have the capability to simulate or function remotely. And that's most engineering labs are actually made that way. And they were made in that way for a reason. So students could work with their hands. And engineering actually is the premise of engineering is learn by doing, build things. So most engineering labs would have that challenge. While in management and law, I would imagine, is a lesser problem, because that's more conceptual, more reading and discussing. And while engineering is actually basic, is by working with your hands. Now there are some technologies which have come up recently. MIT has a few labs where they're calling the virtual lab, where they've opened up. But as of date, their scope is limited. But I think it's a very good thought that going forward, even for traditional engineering, one would have to think of how do I take my labs in the virtual world.
Akshay, I want to quickly jump in and tell something, Ramananda. Akshay, a couple of years ago, I was at a data analytics summit in San Francisco, and Google had, participated in it, and they brought these amazing virtual, reality sort of equipments. And I've been always skeptical about this, so I put it in, and it was just amazing. So, and then there are sensory perceptions which have come about. You are right that this could just be, in some ways, so long as all of us think it will substitute everything that we do entirely. If we don't do that, a good part of it can be useful to many things that we are doing.
Okay, that's an interesting thing. This is a discussion which we could probably carry on for the whole day. I think I mentioned that in my mail, but we are almost sort of running out of time. And Hemant, I'd like to started with you, and since you're the technology person in this whole group right now, and you're the person who's offering solutions, as a technology provider, what are the kind of how would I put it, the biggest challenges that you face? The first challenge would be to sort of convince people that don't look at it as short term, see it as a long term solution. But apart from that, are there any specific sort of challenges that you faced while dealing with universities, while approaching them with your solutions?
Yeah. So I think I'll break this into three parts. The first part is like education institutions are no exception. They are the same like other organizations. So the quality of technology being used in an institution is directly connected to what does the leader of the organization think about technology. So if the leader of the organized institution thinks, yes, technology is useful, we need to invest in technology, we need to make sure everybody accepts it and invest in building a culture of adopting technology is one of the most important things. And a lot of times we see that become the challenge. That's point one. Second point is that even though you have the intent from the top leadership of technology, do you have the right set of people who can actually implement technology? A lot of times I see they think, oh, it can be just implemented in an easy way. They don't invest in the right kind of people who are required to adopt technology. And what examples we have seen is that from a very mediocre to great implementation of technology, the biggest differentiator has been the quality of teams university has put to implement these technology, and that's the second thing. And even now, a lot of institutions signed up for Colpal platform in the COVID era, and they wanted to do online classes. And we saw most of them struggling because the kind of people who were trying to implement these systems did not have the right qualifications or knowledge to implement. And then what will happen? You will not get the returns on these investments, and the organization will make an opinion that, oh, technology is working out for us. So that's the second. And third, the last thing which I want to make a point is having the right metrics. If you're not measuring the success of technology implementation and you're not regularly doing those reviews, people will start slacking. People will start taking it in a easy way, and it will die a slow death. You will invest a lot of money in technology. It will be there for a long time, and slowly it will die down because you're not measuring the success of it, and you're not driving decisions on that basis. So I think three these buy-in from the top leadership, the right teams to implement, and the right metrics in place to measure whether it's being adopted successfully or not.
Okay, before we sort of close, I think anyway we are out of time. I have two sort of questions which, though we have covered most of the questions in our discussions, but I am looking at some one interesting question came to Dr. Samanta. I think somebody disagrees with you about that suicide, saying that in Kerala we have so good bandwidth and such good education policies that it couldn't have been just because of not getting access to thing. But the other question that I'm seeing here from somebody called Amir Das, who says that that engineering education, and I suppose in many ways even medical education, requires hands-on experience and proper immersive learning. And could it be that there could be a partner like some IIT or NIT or somebody across the country, which we also raised? I think we've answered that question, but is that model really workable? I mean, in the sense that I think Mittal already answered that question in some way, but is there somebody else who has thoughts on that?
See, there is Professor Samanta will be answering his question. I'm only talking about this small thing. UGC has launched a scheme called Pramarsh. In that Pramarsh scheme, the institutions with higher NAC rating are sort of mentoring the institutions with lower NAC rating or with no NAC rating, so that they can also come up to a certain level. So we are working on a scheme of mentor-mentee, in which the better institutions are mentoring the poor institutions and hand-holding them so that they can come to a level playing field. Professor Samanta for his question, please.
Yeah, it's good questions that the engineering institutes, etc., that should be mentored by the national institute like IIT. And we all know that institutions or the universities are not built in one day or in 1 year. Good institutes and good universities are used to take many years. So similarly, I will also fully agree with Mr. Hemant ji that leaders of the institute should decide how much they should invest in technology.
I
In my
think
opinion,
there's a slow connection, somebody here, but there is one very interesting remark which I would like to close with, and maybe, it's by somebody called Atul Kulkarni, who says that, as per Rabindranath Tagore's education, as per Rabindranath Tagore's education is all about self-realization. Our educationalists taking care of this. Even the UN Charter says that, the purpose of education is to learn to know, learn to do, learn to live together. So are we sort of addressing education in that manner, or are we? I'll leave you with the thought, because I don't want a yes or no, but it's thought to close this thing with. We've run out of time, so I really like to thank all of you for a truly fascinating discussion. I don't know about the people watching, but I sure learned a lot. Thank you, Hemant, for having helped us put all this together. It was really wonderful to have such a eminent panelists amongst us. Thank you, Dr. Samanta. Thank you, Dr. Mittal. Thank you, Dr. Rajkumar, Mr. Munjal, and of course, Dr. Samanta. Thank you so very much. On that note, I would like to stay in touch with you, and perhaps we could even do a similar session sometime later. That would be wonderful, because I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in, but I think we've answered most of them, so I won't bring them up again and again, because we'll be repeating ourselves. So thank you all very, very much indeed. And with that, we'll close this edition of our session on Indian Education Outlook. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you very much, Rajkumar ji, Pankaj Mittal ji, for their love and affection to my noble work.
Thank you.